but welcome, welcome. I see familiar faces on here and I see new faces, and I'm so glad that you took time out to focus on self-care and stress management. We all need this. And I am Tanya Hitchman with ALS Texas. If I've not had a chance to interact with you on the phone, by email or text, I would love to do that. If you've got any questions, my primary role on our ALS Texas team is supporting caregivers of all ages, including youth and children. But all of us work and support our ALS Texas community in every way that we can. So I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions. And if I'm not the person that's got the absolute best answer for you, I'll connect you to who does. That's what we want to do. So again, welcome. This is interactive. It looks like we'll have a small enough group today where you could raise your hand, you can unmute your microphone, but use the chat even throughout the discussion. If you see a slide that really speaks to you, put something in the chat, share that. We're all in this together and we want to hear from you. So use your chat, use your reactions. This is not just me talking to y'all for 45 minutes. This is us discussing and talking and sharing with each other, right? Because all of us have stress. It never goes away. ALS is not the only stress that you're dealing with in your life. That's why it's really important to have this information. So we are going to dig right in. And like I said, I will keep checking the waiting room. But we're going to talk about direction on the self-care journey and understanding how trauma and stress cycles affect our well-being, and we're going to tap into or learn how to tap into our resiliency and our purpose because it matters. Let me see what we've got going in the chat. Let's see here. All right, let me go in here and oops, sorry, just a second. I'm trying to go through here. Fred, I clicked on you and that's not what I wanted. So, okay, we're good. Let me make sure. I'm trying to remove somebody from here. We've had people join and they don't do anything on your end, but they send us some spam links. And so I'm trying to make sure that I can remove them from here, and I think we're good. So I apologize for that, but we're going to get started into stress less on purpose, and you're in the right spot. All right. Today, this is kind of a roadmap of what you can expect. All right. Our purpose journey it's a journey with rippled effects. We're going to talk about life phases and the it's not fair phase that we all have. We're going to talk about stress and trauma and how our body reacts. I mentioned that a few minutes ago. It's okay to have a meltdown. We need to give ourselves permission to do that, but we don't stay melting, right? We've got to move past that. Change our perspective. If you've joined me before, you've seen my little diamond paperweight, and it's about perspective. When I turn this paperweight, it's a reminder to me I see different reflections, different prisms on the wall, and how I change and view this paperweight. And it's a reminder that's how life is too. It's a matter of changing our perspective most often. We're going to talk about to me and for me, and that's that perspective. Our purpose, our why, and as promised, you're going to get a first aid kit that's going to help you practice some self-care and stress management. So all those things you will be getting, all right? Feel free, like I said, to use the chat. We'd love to hear from you and any questions that you've got along the way. I mentioned that it's a journey, again, and we'll hear this throughout this presentation. It's not one day, it's not 1 month. The purpose journey, our life journey is one that is ongoing. I oftentimes have my Slinky with me. And for those of you that know me, again, the Slinky is a reminder of the life spiral, all right? If we look at the Slinky, how many of you, raise your hand, remember a Slinky? Do you remember the Slinkies? Yeah, they go down the stairs and yay, Charlie's got hers. I love it. So a Slinky is a reminder of the life spiral. Sometimes, and if you'll look here, we've got kind of a flat area where we're rocking along. personally, professionally, every way. We're kind of on a plateau. Things are just moving along. Ultimately, something happens that knocks us off that trigger, right? It could be something small, it could be something big, but we don't stay there. Something happens in life that knocks us off of our core, and sometimes it's a big something, okay? ALS diagnosis is a big something. It's not the only thing you have going on. There are hot water heaters breaking down, there are houses flooding, there's people getting married, there's babies being born, there's all kinds of good and bad triggers, if you will, that knock us off of our plateau. And sometimes it kind of leaves us spiraling in the wind, right? Like, where am I going? What am I doing? I'm so unsure about my direction right now. Being grounded in your purpose, knowing your purpose, no matter what your situation, no matter what your circumstance, is key. It's so key. You've got to be grounded when those winds of change happen. Knowing where you've been, where you're at, and where you're headed is key. I had a pastor tell me years ago, if you're not in the middle of a storm right now, you just got out of one or you're headed to one. Would y'all agree? Those storms are coming. So you've got to be grounded. You've really got to be grounded in that purpose, because when you're wondering what the heck is going on, your purpose, your why is there, okay? And that's why it's so important. I've got a Monopoly game board up here because nobody gets a get out of jail free card in that life spiral. Nobody gets to stay on a plateau. And believe it or not, nobody stays in the something's happening all the time, right? Things eventually do plateau. And that's that spiral. You can always count on it to be doing that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Nobody is immune to the stress that's happening right now. I pulled this quote really from the pandemic and even last year, but it sustains even now because we can turn on the news, we can turn on the radio, and we can hear about monkeypox. We can hear about the rising gas prices. We can hear about ALS drug trials that failed in a phase, or there's always news that keeps us in a heightened state of stress. So nobody is immune to the stress that's happening right now. Different people are experiencing different levels of stress overall. Collectively, as a country, as a community, we weren't meant to maintain this level of stress for this long. It puts us in a hyper-vigilant, hyper-aroused state. And this is from the American Psychological Association. So mental health, self-care is important now more than ever for all of us, no matter what your age is. Would you agree? I read the other day that teen suicides are on the rise. Everybody needs to focus and have permission to focus on self-care. So let's talk a little bit about trauma and stress and how your body reacts. Y'all are going to recognize a lot of this, I know. So who has heard of fight, flight, or freeze? Fight, flight, or freeze. When you get into a real or perceived threatening situation, your body, your brain responds without you even having to tell it to do so. Our bodies are amazing. We know that, right? We don't even have to say, I feel scared. Our body knows. So all of us respond in these three areas, and there may be some variations, but fight, flight, or freeze. So when our body perceives a real or it's perceived threat, the brain kicks in and it starts sending signals to the rest of the body, some physical things that we experience, but things that we don't even know. The amygdala starts releasing cortisol, which is the stress hormone. The pituitary gland, it starts working. So adrenaline's released, cortisol's released. Those things are happening that we don't know. How we do know that it's happening are by some of these physical things. Your heart rate increases. You have to go to the restroom. Tunnel vision, it's like you can't even see what's around you. Shaking. I don't know about y'all, but when I am in a situation where I'm scared or I feel threatened, my heart rate is super fast. It feels like my heart is about to beat out of my chest. and I can feel my hands are shaking. That's how I know that my body is in a stress response to whatever is happening. Maybe it's something somebody has said to me. Maybe it's a situation that I'm in. That's how I know my body's in a stress response. So all of us respond in kind of these three different ways: fight, flight, or freeze. So with fight, we approach the situation with maybe a physical fight. Some people will punch a wall, right? Or they'll want to hit somebody. There's anger and rage, but they want to take action. Others, flight is their response. They avoid the situation with worry, fear, anxiety. Think about these responses in your relationships with your partner, with your spouse, with your family, with your work colleagues. If you are working, think about how people respond, and just think about some people that you know that respond this way. Do you know anybody that when they are in a stressful situation, they just avoid it? I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to have this conversation. If I don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. Anybody know anybody like that? Kind of put your head in the sand, right? And then you probably know some people too that when they feel stressed, they're mad. You can feel it. Their temper comes out. And then you've got the freeze. For some of us, when we are in that threatening situation where we feel scared, we just shut down. Your body actually saves you. It knows without you telling it to shut down, to slam on the brakes. So you can't even do anything. You can't think, you can't move, and that's for your own protection. All of these are morally neutral. There's no right or wrong. Your body knows best. Like I said, for me, my heart rate goes up and I shake. You may not do that, but I've learned over time to recognize those signs. And I'm going to tell you why it's so important that we're laying this foundation for the stress response. Because when you can learn to recognize that your body is reacting that way, it helps you with next steps, like making big life decisions, right? And how you're going to handle a situation or a circumstance. You've got to complete the stress cycle. These physical things that are happening in your body are the warning signs or the indicators that I'm in a stress response. But what do you do after that happens? And that's what we're going to talk about. All right, everybody with me? So stress and trauma, it's a chemical stew, if you will. I've got this slide up here because there's all these things going on and you have to complete the cycle or it doesn't stop. Again, just because you recognize I'm in a stress response without traveling that tunnel, it's not going to change your stress level. So emotions and feelings are real, even for those of you that may be the freeze or even the flight. I'm not going to address this. The emotions and the feelings are real. They're not going to go away. They may temporarily while you're in that stress response, but they're going to come back up. They are in our body and they affect everything we do all the time. If you've joined us on our trauma-informed yoga sessions before, Miss Ebony has shared that when we are experiencing trauma, and y'all, an ALS diagnosis is trauma for everyone involved. And there's other traumas happening too. When we experience trauma, it's in the tissue of our skin, it's in our body everywhere. It has to get out somehow. And we know that stressors activate a stress response from our body. Those are those physical signs we just talked about on the slide before this. Just because we deal with an issue doesn't mean the feelings have been addressed. And what I mean by that, for example, if you are crossing a street and you're walking or you're in your power chair and a car almost hits you, but you get to the other side, your heart may be beating fast, you're like, oh my goodness, I made it across. But you've got to deal with what was related to that, the fear, whatever emotions are a part of those physical responses. You've got to travel that stress tunnel from beginning, middle to end. And the stress first aid kit that we give you is going to help you to travel that tunnel and to end the cycle so that those feelings are addressed, that stress is addressed. Always keeping in mind What is the need behind the behavior response? So when we are in fight, flight, or freeze, we know there's a need, right? There's fear, and we need to address that. And keep this in mind, even when, like, again, your partner or your spouse, if they are reacting in a stress response and they are fighting, that's their response. They're with words, you know, they're angry. Maybe they're saying things that you do not deserve. What is the response needed behind that behavior? It's probably that reassurance, right? The fear that's there. So just being mindful of that can help change your relationships too. And that's so important for all of us and our family members. Stress comes from wanting things to be different. Sounds really simple, right? You're like, yeah, that's it. I want this to be different and I don't like it. It's not about as much about what's happening in the future, but wanting to control it. We have talked about in the past managing the universe. We can't manage the universe, and that causes us stress when we want to control it, but things aren't going as we plan. So we need to acknowledge the feelings, surrender to those feelings, and travel the emotional tunnel to complete the cycle, or it's not going to go away. They're just going to keep bubbling up in that stew, right? Along my own personal self-care and stress management journey, there are several individuals, some who are still with us and some who have passed, but their works, their books, their whatever they have written, or if there were videos, are still inspiring. I've got a couple that are inspirational to me, and you may find them to be so too. Dr. Viktor Frankl was a World War II Holocaust survivor, researcher, and psychiatrist. He wrote many books. My favorite is Man's Search for Meaning. I encourage you to get the Audible version, to see if your library has it, get it on Amazon. It is not a big read at all. His book shares his experience in concentration camps, and I believe there were 4 that he and his family were in. He saw his family members killed, his pregnant wife, and he was actually put on and tasked with watching other prisoners and determining who was a suicide risk. So in his research, he found that those that had resiliency and perspective were the ones that were going to survive. When I talk about perspective, I mentioned at the beginning, it's how we're looking at a situation. Why is this happening for me and not to me? That's a big difference. Would you agree? I know so many times, and I don't know about y'all, I have said, why is this happening to me? I've done this, I don't deserve it, it's not fair. And all of those things may be true, but if I change my perspective on why is this happening for me, what am I meant to learn from it? What am I meant to do good with this? And how is it related to my purpose? And that's what we're talking about today too. Why do I wake up in the morning? My purpose, my why. Simon Sinek is still living today. He does books, videos, he's on social media. And he talks about our purpose, our why. Corporations need a why, we need a why. If somebody were to ask you, and I'm looking at names on here, Bertha, Wallace, Charlie, if somebody were to ask you, what's your purpose? Would you be able to answer? If you couldn't, we're going to talk about that today and at least give you a starting point, because you should be able to answer that. Your purpose doesn't change regardless of your circumstance. And I have an illustration here from Dr. Frankl as well. The one thing you can't take away from me is the way I choose to respond to what you do to me. And that's life too, right? The last of one's freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. Perspective. No matter what life throws at me, nothing can change or make me respond in a way that I don't want to. That power is within me. All right. We have talked about finding your purpose, and you're like, how do I do that if I don't know? I am going to send you an activity that you'll be able to look at whenever time allows for you. This is something I go back to pretty often. And Richard Leiter is another individual that I follow today, and he's also on social media and does TED Talks. But his most recent work is Your Calling Calling? And our purpose is really our calling, right? What we are here for, why we truly wake up in the morning. Not because the dog needed to go out or we need to go to the restroom, but what drives us? Why do we wake up in the morning? And there's a formula here that gifts plus passions plus values equal our calling. We're going to really, in this activity, and when you get this, you'll do this on your own, discover or rediscover your gifts. What are the things that you truly love doing? Not what people have told you you're good at, but what you love doing. And are you using those in some way each day? Self-care is so important. When we're not using our gifts and living on purpose, our body will tell us, and that can contribute to that stress too. When what we're thinking, feeling, and doing, if we're not walking the walk, when those things are not in alignment, our body is going to tell us. So again, when you're feeling those days where I'm just off today, I don't know what it is, do your purpose checkup. And we're going to talk about the purpose checkups, but you'll get this activity that will help you look at these callings, if you will, and pick your top 5. Doesn't mean that you don't have more, but what are the things that you really love doing? For example, when I've done this before, a husband has said, I love painting. Art is just a love of mine, but I haven't had time to do it. I'm caring for my wife who's living with ALS, and that's my calling now. You bet. Being a caregiver is a calling, without a doubt. It doesn't mean that you don't have other gifts, and I encourage you to use those. I challenged him to spend 5 minutes a day painting, to find a corner, to find a room just to paint, to do those things that bring him joy. And this activity is going to help you identify those. Some of these are, actually most of them are pretty subjective. It's what it means to you, not anybody else. For example, when I have done this, and every time I'm in the same preferences and the kind of the environments, if you will. Mine are in social and artistic. And for those that know me, that is not a surprise at all. So adding humor is not one of my gifts of the top 5, but I try to do that a lot. Building relationships is one of mine. Healing wounds is one of mine. Growing things is one of mine. So when you look at this, think about that. So for me, healing wounds. I've had people say, is that healing physical wounds? I've talked to teenagers that were getting ready to graduate from high school, and she said, I want to be a physical therapist, so I think healing wounds is one of my gifts. You bet. It could totally be a physical wound. For me, healing wounds or emotional wounds. Most of my professional career has been working with families that were in some of the toughest times of their lives. And so for me, that's something that brings me joy in being able to provide some kind of relief. So look at these, and maybe you'll be reminded of, you know what? I do love building things. I like fixing things. I like solving problems. Whatever yours are, growing things. Maybe it's a garden. Maybe it's growing people. What do you enjoy? I'm going to send this to you in a follow-up email. You'll be able to go to it anytime you want. But it's important that you discover your gifts, because those are going to help you find your purpose, all right? What is your purpose? So I challenge you all to write your own personal purpose statement, your mission statement. We all have a default purpose to grow and to give. So if you're struggling, just know, grow and give is our default purpose for all of us. But use this format, and I'll send this to you in the follow-up email too. With my gifts, that's the exercise we did before this. What are your 5 top gifts? With my gifts of, I want to serve. What do I want to do? What's my passion? The calling is calling activity says gifts plus passion. Those things that matter to us, those things that we take a stand for. So I want to serve using my passion for what gets me up in the morning. Why? What's my why? Is it for your family, your community? That's totally subjective, but develop and begin developing your purpose statement. I think when we're talking about purpose, it's really important to touch on our story. All of us have a story, right? And when we're getting to know people, we want to hear their story. We want to share our story, and being vulnerable is how we connect. So what is your story? Maybe it's the true narrative, and maybe you've also been making one up, because this is from Brene Brown, by the way. I don't know if any of you follow Brene Brown. She's another one that I follow these days. The most powerful stories may be the ones that we tell ourselves, but be aware, beware, they're usually fiction. Storytelling helps us all impose order and chaos, right? And that stress when we're in that tunnel. So including emotional chaos. When we're in pain, we create a narrative to help us make sense of it. Our stories are also our self-protection, but they can limit us. Think about your gifts. Again, the gentleman that said, I'm a caregiver, I don't have time to paint. That's a story you've been telling yourself, but do you have 2 minutes a day that you could paint? You probably do. So think about the stories you've been telling yourself, your narrative, and begin to change that narrative. All right, I mentioned that we were going to have a self-care first aid kit that's going to go along with this, something you can always go back and refer to. You've got to get out of the rut, and you've got to dig a trench of resiliency. Remember, Dr. Frankl said, the one thing you can't take away is how I choose to respond. My resiliency, how I'm going to respond and bounce back from the situation that I'm in. So you're going to get this by email too. It'll probably be, I would say on Friday, y'all, that I will email all of you, and you'll get these tools and resources we've talked about today, including this first aid kit. So we're going to talk about a few things here. And I want to preface that when we talk about breathing, we underestimate the power of deep breathing, cleansing breaths to break the stress cycle. We also understand that many in our ALS community have compromised respiratory systems. So know that when we talk about breathing, it's if you're able, if it's safe for you to take those deep breaths, you do what's good for you. But if you're able to take deep breaths, it can help break that stress cycle so quickly. Don't worry, if you're not able to do the deep breathing, there's other things that we're going to show you too. So I challenge all of you, and giving you some tools to help manage your stress, to find a minute a day at least, and work up from there for mindfulness, to pause, to challenge your thoughts, and choose how you're going to respond. So stop, challenge, and choose. As you become more aware of your body and being in a stress response, you can choose that even more and say, you know what? Right now is not the time for me to have this conversation, but I want to come back to it. I'm in a stress response. So my fight, flight, or freeze actions and responses are not my real responses. And I want to come back to this. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Meditate or pray, whatever works for you to have that calm and peace. Start out choosing one object. Maybe it's a candle, or it's just an object where you can spend a minute just looking at this object and tuning out everything else around you. So if I were to spend a minute looking at this, I would look at the colors, the shapes, I would feel the texture, I would flip it over. I just want to focus, and it teaches me to focus on one thing and tune out everything else so that you can have that meditation or prayer. Don't worry, you're not going to be perfect at it. I have told people that I totally have ADHD when I meditate and pray. Every morning I start out with my quiet time and journaling and my prayer, and y'all, every single day, no matter how hard I try, I'm in my meditation and my prayer, my deep breathing, and I think, did I put that on the grocery list? Do I need to do the clothes? And I'm like, oh, I need to get back to my prayer, and I need to get back to my meditation. So it takes time to be able to tune out what's around you and really focus on that calm. So start with a minute a day. Again, breathing is the best way to break a stress cycle. When your hands are shaking, when your heart's beating, those deep breaths help break that stress cycle. Left nostril breathing calms the brain. So I see some new faces on here who have not joined me before, and I'm going to scroll on my screen. Oh, some of you have your cameras turned off. Okay, that's fair enough. But for those of you that have your camera on, I am looking, because we're all going to be silly together, and I know Charlie's going to do it. But cover your right nostril if you are able, if it's comfortable, if it's safe, and take 2 deep breaths through your left nostril only. All right. I'm scrolling through here. Yay, Susan, I see you doing it. There you go. Be brave. Left nostril breathing calms the brain. This is not just me saying that, y'all. This is a fact in how our body responds, okay? Another thing that I don't have on here, and the way our body kind of protects us, how many of you, when you're in deep thought or you're perplexed by something, and this is me, I know I do it. If I'm trying to figure out something, I'm doing like this. I'm like figuring it out, I'm looking. Right here, when we put pressure, it calms our brain too. We don't even have to think about it. Our body just knows, hey, I need to have a little bit of calming here. So there's things that you can do. Left nostril breathing, recognizing when we talk about a body scan, recognizing your physical responses to stress. If you have a smartwatch, if you have a Fitbit, if you have, even there's so many apps on your phones now that can help monitor your heart rate. If you're able to look at one of those things and your heart rate is over 100, and you're not exercising, now it'll go up with exercise. But if your heart rate is over 100 and you're in the middle of a discussion or a situation, you are almost certainly in a stress response. So just being mindful of that and saying, you know what, I need a break. I need to meditate, I need to breathe, meditate. I need to break this stress cycle. It's certainly not the time to be making any big decisions. As a caregiver, helping to provide care for someone living with ALS, there are a lot of responsibilities that each day bring decisions, right? We can get emotionally flooded. We've got to break that stress cycle before we make those decisions and don't feel like we have to make them in 30 seconds. So my why, that's on our toolkit too. Knowing our why. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, resilience and choice. Remember those. Is your calling, go back to your calling. Am I using my gifts? Knowing your why gives you a filter to make choices with an infinite mindset. It's not about this moment or this day. It's a journey. Remember, we talked about that journey. And so the decisions I make need to not be in the moment, but for the journey. And connection and support are huge. What y'all are doing today and connecting with each other, you can't do it alone. Getting on isolation island is really hard to get off of. Don't go there. Connect with the community, connect with our team. You've got team members throughout the state and you can reach out to any of us. And we want to make sure that you all are connected too. So these are some of the tools that you're going to get. And I want to share a few more and you'll get this as well. All of these are creating a foundation for change. Awareness, hearing some of these words today, being aware of our body's response is creating a foundation crucial to change. Anxiety tries to distract us, pretending to be bigger than it is. When we are grounded in our purpose and using our gifts, we can choose how to respond and anxiety is not going to have such a big control over that response. All right. So this handout that you'll get has a few more exercises that you can do. Again, taking 10 deep breaths, really taking the deep breaths if you're able to, where you feel it down in your belly and your lower back, and just breathing as deep as you can and letting that out. It relaxes your mind. Gratitude. This is something that all of us can do as well. Write down what you are grateful for. What has been good in a day? I'm pretty sure your day doesn't go as you plan every day, but what was the good in it? Good surprises happen every day too, right? What are you grateful for? And scalp rub. I have shared this, but you can, this is another thing that y'all can do on the screen here, but doing a scalp massage on yourself with as much pressure as feels good for you, feels great, doesn't it, y'all? If you're just massaging your scalp right now, and if you've got fingernails, it's a bonus, but it's not required. That feels good too. And it feels even better when you do that on a loved one. You connect. Our brains carry that stress there. And when we massage, we literally help relieve some of that stress. These are easy things that you can do. And laughter. Laughter is the best medicine. I have this picture up, and I know a few of you have seen this, but there is humor to be found in just about every situation. Again, it's about perspective. Sometimes you can literally either cry or laugh, and you can choose how you're going to respond to that. Maybe you cry and then you laugh. That happens sometimes too. So I think of Steel Magnolias when I think of that. You know, they're crying and then there's laughter. So those things can happen together. Laughter is the best medicine. And so this is a picture of me and my family. And if y'all don't recognize me, I'm the one with the mouth wide open. And you know what? The more I have done this workshop, I find so many pictures of me that people have taken at our family events, and I'm doing this. So it's just the way that I laugh, but it feels good when you can laugh deep down in your belly. And this situation, it wasn't a big catastrophe, but my daughter was getting married in London, and we were getting ready to have a family photo. My daughter's on the left in this picture, my son-in-law, me, and my husband. And the photographer had us all lined up for a picture, and I thought my hand was on my son-in-law's back. Right before the photographer took the picture, I realized my hand was not on his back, and it was instead on his behind. This is my soon-to-be son-in-law, and I'm grabbing his butt. That's about all I can say for that. So I look at him and I said, "Oh my gosh, is my hand on your butt?" And he's got a British accent, and he said, "I thought it was Taylor." I was like, "My God, babe, we have 3 days." So I'm laughing at that because he tells my husband, "You need to control your wife." The photographer chose to take this picture at this moment, and it's priceless to me. I have it hanging in my house. My daughter has it hanging in her house because it was the moment. Live in the moment. Find the moments to laugh about. They are there. The other ways you can connect are social media, phone calls, text, emails, events like this. Look on the screen, y'all. You're not the only one on this. You've got people that you can connect with that get it. You can connect with me. I get it. Ask for help. More often than not, friends and family want to help. They just don't know how. And especially if you're helping to provide care for a loved one, maintain a healthy diet. Eating the right foods can have a massive impact on your stress levels. And we actually have a cooking demonstration coming up on Thursday with the chefs from Two Tastes, that they're going to show us some meal prep to help save time and give us some recipes that can keep caregivers healthy, and how you can modify those recipes to add calories for those living with ALS. That's Thursday, and it is going to be at 11 o'clock. So join us for that as well, y'all. Remember, the purpose journey and being mindful, focusing on purpose and self-care take time. You've got to walk in it, and you got to become comfortable. Think about when you get new shoes or boots. Ooh, it feels not good at first, right? It feels uncomfortable and different, but the more you do it, the more you walk in it, the easier it is to recognize how your body is reacting to stress and to practice self-care. A lot of us don't think about that. My daughter was sharing with me, she works in leadership development over in London, and she said, we did a self-care workshop, and the facilitator asked, name 5 of your most important relationships. So think about your 5 most important relationships. Did you list yourself in there? Probably not. We don't think about self-care as being an important relationship. It takes practice. So I challenge you to include yourself in that. Do those purpose checkups. How am I doing? And remember to put on your own mask first and listen to what your body's telling you. You can't care for someone else if you're not caring for yourself. Go back to your toolkit, right? You'll have that with you and you can do that. We have more ways for you to connect. Go to our homepage on the alstexas.org website. Brood Awakenings is this Thursday at 7:30 a.m. Women caregivers, if you're not on Brood Awakenings, you're missing out. This is an incredible group of ladies. They are sheroes. They are sheroes. They are sharing resources, tips, support, and friendship. You won't want to miss the women's caregiver group. We have a men's caregiver group too that meets monthly. And next month, join us for Running on Empty, where we dig deeper into caregiving and the cost of caregiving and burnout and compassion fatigue. And lastly, I want to share with y'all, when I mentioned that friends and family want to help, they just don't sometimes know how, form a walk team. We are coming up on walk season in October. If you are interested and have not yet formed a walk team, or your family has not yet formed a walk team, reach out to me and I will connect you with the right person on our team that will coach you every step of the way. All right. And you can connect with others. Remember, that's an important part of self-care. I am going to stop sharing. And if y'all have any questions, comments, I would love to hear that. And if you could, put in the chat, what is the one thing, the biggest thing that you took away from this workshop today? Because we want to give you more of that. We want to keep giving you more of what is helpful. So tell me what resonated with you today. What did you find value in? I'm going to check the chat. And if you want to turn off your microphones and you just want to share, you can do that too. You don't have to use the chat box.
I'm always being told to care for myself where I can take better care of Ken. But I think as caregivers, we tend to forget, we think we're taking care of ourselves, but then things happen and you realize, nope, you're not doing what you need to do. So yeah. It's good to have that reminder.
Yeah, we need those reminders. It takes practice, right? We think we are, but when we really stop, we're like, whoa, I've not gone to the doctor myself in over a year. I have not done this. I haven't connected with friends, whatever it may be. I saw that Mark put in the chat, don't forget your hobby, your gifts, those things that you truly love doing. If you're not using them, you're going to feel it. And you can find ways to do it in a number of ways. It may look differently than what you've done before ALS, but doesn't have to go away. That's exactly right. Yes, Susan, I have to take care of myself before I can take care of my Ernest. Yep, it's very hard to take time for me. Susan, it's not easy. I challenge all of you to spend 1 minute a day and work up from there, because you know what? If you can spend 1 minute a day, pat yourself on the back. You did it. You were intentional, you were focused, and work up from there. Take time for me. That's right, Linda. It's not selfish. It's critical. On that toolkit that you'll get, you'll see a little, you know, the life raft, the little, you know, the lifesaver that we throw out, because it's critical to our self-care. When we get into running on empty, we talk about how even as a caregiver, your own health can decline because you're not taking care of yourself. Sally, I'd love to get others to laugh. Yes, it feels good, doesn't it? My family, I'm kind of known for that. They say that I'm extra and I'm okay with that. All right. Thank you all so much for the feedback. I'm glad that you got one thing from this. Remember to take care of yourself. It's so, so important. It's a journey. You've got to take care of yourself before you can care for anybody else. And that's probably the biggest takeaway that I want you to have today, besides having fun and living on purpose and knowing what your purpose is. So next month we'll do Running on Empty. I hope you join us for that. We've got Brood Awakenings on Thursday. We've got the cooking demo on Thursday. And just keep checking our website because we're adding stuff all the time. And if you have any questions, need anything, y'all know how to reach me. Reach out anytime. I love talking to our ALS friends, and I'm so glad that you took time out today.
Thank
All
you.
right, goodbye, y'all.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the rest of your day.